Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Death by suicide. Autopsy results for 2 BC murder suspects. Also,
it affects everybody with very much a trickle-down.
The scramble to rebook weddings after someone cut the cable on the Sea to Sky Gondola. And
unbelievable things to see and do in British Columbia.
The mountains, the ocean.
BC tourism is booming. Why the focus is now on sending travelers off the beaten path.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. We now have confirmation the bodies found in the brush near Gillam, Manitoba, are those of the fugitives suspected in 3 northern BC deaths.
We also know how teens Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski died. But as Tanya Fletcher reports, there are still many questions that need to be answered.
At least one answer today after the cross-country manhunt that spanned weeks and crossed provinces. We now know Briar Schmigelski and Cam McLeod died of apparent suicide by gunfire. What we don't know is when exactly. RCMP suggests they lived for days after they were last spotted alive on July 22nd near Split Lake, Manitoba, but that they were also dead for days before they were found August 7th. Medical experts say it can be tough to pinpoint specific dates.
The 2 bodies may have different states of preservation depending upon the microenvironment where they were. A body kept in very cool conditions can remain pretty well preserved for a long time. A body in very warm conditions, not so much.
RCMP also confirmed 2 firearms were found near the bodies. Forensic analysis will determine whether those are the same weapons connected to the killings of Lucas Fowler, China Dees, and Leonard Dick. Police are also still searching for a motive.
They can look at some of the evidence and come up with some very often scientifically based reasons for what happened. And again, since we don't have statements off the accused, that might be our best bet.
A behavioral analysis team will now investigate the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Schmigelski and McLeod. Investigators sifted through more than 1,000 tips over the course of the case. Even the military was brought in to help. So another question, why did such an extensive search turn up so little for so long?
This is a massive territory and very inhospitable territory, some of the most rugged terrain in the country. The police took all the available measures in terms of personnel, in terms of technology.
We reached out to the families of the suspects and the victims. None of them wanted to comment as they await the final update on the investigation, but RCMP say that could be a few weeks yet. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
A 24-year-old man has been convicted of second-degree murder in the death of a rental agent in Vancouver just over 2 years ago. Diego Alfonso Huerta has been sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for 10 years. Huerta had been living in a condo on Seymour Street for about 3 months when he got into an altercation with 39-year-old Sofiane Kazdagli. Kazdagli was stabbed multiple times. Huerta was arrested soon after boarding a bus out of the city. His lawyer says Huerta acknowledged his role in the murder, but that it was disappointing the judge wasn't convinced that manslaughter would be a suitable charge.
RCMP are asking for help in finding a man believed to have information about the death of an Nanaimo teen. Michaela Chang was first reported missing in March of 2017. She was found dead 2 months later. Now there's a national appeal in the search for 59-year-old Stephen Bacon. Bacon had a relationship with Chang and is considered a person of interest.
At this point, we have no idea where in Canada he may be, but we are continuing with the investigation, and we're at the point where we need to speak to him again.
Police say Bacon is known to use public transit. He's described as Caucasian, about 200 pounds, standing 5 feet 10 inches tall, with a teardrop tattoo under his left eye, a Bugs Bunny tattoo on his right arm, and an unidentified tattoo on his back right hand. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is asked to call Nanaimo RCMP or Crime Stoppers.
BC's police watchdog is now looking into a deadly officer-involved shooting in Maple Ridge over the weekend. The family of the man who died is demanding answers tonight. RCMP were called to a home yesterday afternoon for a domestic incident. Officers say 3 people were at the home and one of them had a knife. A police officer used a taser on that man, but that didn't work to subdue him, so another officer fired a gun, and the 54-year-old died at the scene. His family says he had mental health issues, and they had phoned police for help to get him to hospital just as they normally do.
One justice for my brother. They gave my brother. Yeah. They lied to me. They promised me we will never shoot your brother, you know. We did this guy all the time. And then they get into their room and 3 of them, they shoot him.
She says they want to tell the public what happened because of the way police handled the situation.
Well, BC seems to be a hotspot for millions of international tourists, so much so that we're expecting another record-breaking year.
But as Andrea Ross reports, there's now a push to get visitors to come here during off-peak times and to go to places a little off the beaten path.
It's a nice mix of the beauty of nature, the mountains, the ocean, as well as a big city, which is a vibrant city. So it's a nice mix.
When it came time to book their summer vacation, Vancouver was a top destination for the Jongenelen family. And coming from the Netherlands, they haven't been disappointed. They saw 5 humpback whales just outside the city during a recent whale watching tour. This natural beauty is one of the reasons Destination BC says it's going to be a record year for tourism.
We're looking at about 23 million trips to or within the province this year, and about 4.9% growth in revenue.
Of those 23 million trips, 6 million are expected to be from travelers outside of Canada, most coming from the United States, the United Kingdom, China, and Mexico. Social media has fueled interest in the province. Visitors and British Columbians alike have used the Explore BC hashtag 5 million times so far to share photos and videos of their travels. To keep tourism growth sustainable and crowds manageable, the province is urging tourists to consider visiting outside of peak season and to get off the beaten path.
There's so much to see, in northern BC, in the Kootenays, on Vancouver Island, all the little islands, on the ocean coast. I mean, we have so much to offer here. We're in such a fortunate situation. The crowds, they may be in some of our urban centers, but we've got lots to offer, around the province.
Businesses that rely on the $18 billion tourism industry are also making changes to accommodate the crowds and minimize their impact on the environment.
A lot of the whale watch companies have embraced the idea of larger vessels that have better capacity for people. When you can take 100 people on one boat versus that same number of people on 10 boats, you're having a less of an impact on the animals, less of an impact on the environment, and it gives a better experience for the whale watch crowd, our guests that come out on the boats.
Preparing now for even busier summers to come. Andrea Ross, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ride-hailing company Lyft says it plans to have drivers on the road in BC by the fall. September 3rd is the first day ride-hailing companies can apply to enter the market. Lyft's general manager for BC says it's not clear when it will be up and running. That depends on when it obtains its operating license and gets enough drivers for its fleet. BC's Ministry of Transportation will require all ride-hailing drivers to possess a Class 4 license, something Lyft says the company hasn't encountered in other cities it operates in.
We would like to put that behind us for now, and we wanted to commit to British Columbia today. We will operate under the requirements that the government has set forth, and we will continue to try to fight to get that change so that we can open up a new supply of drivers.
In the meantime, the company says it does plan to help drivers meet that Class 4 license requirement, and it will provide incentives to cover the costs.
BC businessman Jim Pattison has made an offer to purchase the rest of Canfor in the midst of an industry slump. He's offering $16 a share, which would put the value at about $2 billion. Pattison already owns 51% of the company. If his bid is accepted, it would give him full control over the maker of pulp, plywood, and paper. A special committee of the company's independent directors is reviewing the offer.
The number of impaired drivers taken off the road this summer by the VPD's counterattack program has increased dramatically. The program took 360 drivers off the road between late June and early August. That's 100 more than last year. 24 instances involved people high on drugs. People say some of that increase is because more officers participated in the roadblocks this year. That impaired driving is still a serious problem on Vancouver roads. All the drivers received either a driving suspension or a prohibition, and in 12 cases, they are facing criminal charges.
Well, Kits Beach is closed to swimmers yet again because of higher than normal E. coli levels in the water. The beach itself is still open, but swimming will increase the risk of getting sick with exposure to the bacteria. Kits Beach was also closed back in July after routine E. coli checks found dangerous levels. And for more details, you can go to vch.ca and look for the Beach Water Quality Reports page.
Brett Soderholm is here now for the first look at the forecast, and it was quite chilly and rainy over the weekend. I had to actually get out a jacket and put a hood on. And
you had your fireplace on this morning.
I had to put the fireplace on this morning. It was very cold.
None of this surprises me, really, Anita. I felt bad for you. I knew that you were such a big fan of the air show, and then on Sunday, the weather just really wasn't cooperating down in Abbotsford. But at least for the next 5 days or so, I think it's going to be more to your liking. And to everyone who enjoys temperatures right around 23, 24 degrees, that is about the magic area that we're going to be in for the next little while. And in terms of rainfall, well, we got that out of our system this past weekend. None of that in the near future either. So I did want to show you what our temperatures are like just outside of the metro region. Widespread, as I mentioned, looking at anywhere between 23 to 25 degrees. It's pretty nice. The sun has come out. I wanted to show you here on our satellite and radar. There isn't really anything radar-wise, no rain there, but definitely a few clouds to start off the day. And that sun was able to make a return, and it is actually quite nice. Our temperature story is really going to be the one that we're going to be following over the next little while. Overnight, temperatures are probably going to be going down to around 15 degrees for many people, a little bit cooler if you're east toward the valley. But then when it comes down to tomorrow and really for the next 3 to 4 days after that, we are going to be looking at very comfortable, very seasonal temperatures. So 23, 24 largely is our lucky range to be in for the next little while. And the next shot of rain, really, as much as we desperately need it, that's not going to be coming until essentially Saturday or Sunday of the upcoming weekend.
All right, Brett, thanks. Talk to you again in a bit.
Well, you can watch this newscast and all of CBC's other award-winning content wherever you go by just downloading the free CBC Gem app.
Yep, CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Follow us on all those platforms for extra content you won't see on TV.
Jeffrey Epstein's death is prompting calls for criminal charges against those who helped him. That story coming up.
Well, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body, from meditation apps to spots created to help you zone out.
Yes, there's no shortage of options for you to find your zen, and Talia Ritchie is taking a look at the booming business of relaxation.
Taking a deep breath and a slow step. Along Toronto's waterfront, a group embarks on a reflective experience combining music, spoken word, and nature.
Very simple but powerful when we connect our steps with our breath and take in the landscape, how slowing down and realizing that we're not walking to get from point A to point B anymore, we're just moving to be in the present moment.
Being present seems like a state many are seeking out these days. Hundreds signed up for Mind Travel's first hike in the city, a guided walk with wireless headphones.
It's easy to spend hours staring into your phone, and it's not easy to sit for hours and stare at the water anymore, which is crazy. So I want to get back to doing more of that too.
I think people more than ever are looking for ways to find more meaning, to find more calmness.
And that's just one of the ways that people are trying to achieve mindfulness. They're also lying in float tanks, and they're downloading apps, and they're even doing yoga with puppies and goats. At Soul 7 in Yorkville, the idea is that your brain needs to stay fit just like your body.
From here, we would give you headphones that are just to your right.
These NeuroFit pods aim to help people relax and recharge.
Through guided visualization, sound frequency therapy, and personal mastery coaching. So in a 45-minute session, a deep state of relaxation and mindful meditation is achieved.
And beyond the businesses, one psychiatrist says there's also been clinical studies looking at the benefits of this practice.
Mindfulness might be incorporated in terms of cancer care, helping people with that illness cope better. Mindfulness certainly is a red hot area when you talk about depression and preventing depression relapses. Mindfulness is also something that people sometimes use when they're trying to reduce stress.
Dr. Greitzer says that perhaps the fact that we're talking more about mental health could be contributing to the rise of these businesses and experiences. But he also wants to remind people that before they break the bank on relaxing, it's best to see a family doctor if they do have symptoms of mood or anxiety disorders. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
For me, it's all about watching a good sunset.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not a good relaxer.
I heard that you're a big fan of the float
No,
centers.
I have to get the claustrophobic. You mean the float tanks? No,
Yeah.
No, I have to get exercise or something. Play hockey, and then that kind of relaxes me.
Yeah, it does do it. All right, stay with us. We will have more on what's making international headlines in a few moments.
This weekend's vandalism at the popular Sea to Sky Gondola near Squamish is already having a big economic impact.
The attraction will likely be closed for months, and as Leanne Young reports, whoever cut the cable also dashed the wedding dreams of dozens of people.
She might be thinking it's going to be up and running by then.
Wedding planner Rachel Lythe and her business partner have been working overtime since the weekend. Brides and grooms-to-be have been calling, devastated their dream wedding location is now the scene of a crime.
You know, they're pretty heartbroken because they chose the Sea to Sky Gondola for a reason. It's beauty, and it's sad for them.
With the potential for wedding photos like these, the Sea to Sky Gondola is a hot spot for weddings, particularly in the summer. But with the lift closed indefinitely, Lythe is scrambling to find new venues.
We have about 3 coming up there, so we're actively trying to find other locations for those ones.
3 in the next couple of weeks. It's no easy task. Weddings are typically booked a year in advance.
Really challenging because at this point we've made all the plans with all the vendors, the floor plans, the menus, the flow of the day, everything. And with the wedding at Sea to Sky Gondola, it's logistically more challenging, and so a lot of work's gone into it, and now we have to redo everything, and so do the couple.
The deliberate act of vandalism has left the small community of Squamish shocked. Police say around 4:30 Saturday morning, somebody cut all the metal strands that make up the 5.5-centimeter haul cable, an extremely dangerous act, even without anyone on the gondola.
Extremely dangerous. They put themselves in a very grave situation. The towers themselves are high. The velocity at which that cable unraveled through the wheels is extremely high. It's a very technical area. There are large steep cliffs and rocks, and what they put themselves through is very risky.
No one from the Sea to Sky Gondola Company was available to speak to us on camera today, but in a statement they say the majority of these gondola cars you see behind me are going to have to be replaced, about 20 out of 30 of them, and the cost of damages in the millions.
So there are about over 200 people that work at the gondola, and so everything from full-time, their core team of leaders there, right down to seasonal workers. And so you can imagine that a disruption like this may have an impact, but I don't want to speculate at this time and until we hear more from them about their timeline, about what it can mean for jobs.
And then there's the impact on surrounding businesses, livelihoods that rely on the thousands of tourists drawn in by the promise of a ride up to paradise.
You know, with all the weddings and everything else that happens here, it affects everybody with very much a trickle down. We see a lot of guests that come here after.
For those in the business of making dreams come true, the focus is now on the search for alternate venues.
We just had one there on Saturday and have another one there.
And not letting the bad guys ruin a fairy tale ending. Leanne Young, CBC News, Whistler.
Okay, it is 9:18 a.m. Tuesday in Hong Kong, and the airport there has just reopened after protests forced its unprecedented closure. Dozens of flights were canceled.
Protesters may have left the airport, but the demonstrations do continue. And as Joel Ballard reports, that has people here with family in Hong Kong on edge.
Thousands of protesters filled Hong Kong airport's main terminal, forcing officials to shut it down. Dozens of flights, including one from Vancouver, canceled. 2 months of protests in Hong Kong, violence from both sides. In Vancouver, many Hong Kong Canadians watch on in horror.
It's not fair. It's dangerous for all the Hong Kong people.
CBC News spoke with this woman. We've agreed to protect her identity as she fears for the safety of her family back in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong now is in a very, very dangerous position.
She moved to Canada back in 1992, but most of her family still lives in Hong Kong.
The message I got from them is worry, fear, not safe.
To the point where she says they are now considering leaving the place they love.
It's quite painful when you, and also now it's not you choose, you're forced to do it, right? In order to protect all your young families.
Protests began months ago after Hong Kong tried to pass an extradition bill. It has since been dropped, but the residents see it as another example of mainland China encroaching on their political autonomy and freedom, and have responded with ever-growing protests. In a statement, the Consulate General of the People's Republic of China in Vancouver defended the government's actions. The recent protests and demonstrations have turned into radical violence that seriously violates the law. No responsible government will turn a blind eye to such serious violent crimes. The violence not unnoticed by Prime Minister Trudeau.
We are calling for peace, for order, for dialogue. We certainly call on China to be very careful and very respectful in how it deals with people who have legitimate concerns in Hong Kong.
Also watching from BC is Tim Pack, his father's side of the family still living in Hong Kong.
Just being here, but then also feeling kind of hopeless in that I can't really directly impact it by being there or taking care of family members.
Pack says the political turmoil has caused a rift between not just the residents of Hong Kong, but also families.
It's just getting very difficult to talk about the issue with certain people in the family, especially between different generations.
Some family members side with the protesters, others with police, Pack says, leading to confrontation.
We want to make sure that families are staying together, especially in a time like this where there's so much division, so many opinions, so much violence back home.
While tensions continue to rise on the ground in Hong Kong, the families of the protesters are left to watch from the sidelines, praying the violence will end.
Don't continue to hurt the citizens. We are Hong Kong people.
Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
The U.S. Attorney General is promising to investigate the death of multi-millionaire Jeffrey Epstein.
The accused sex trafficker died in jail Saturday of an apparent suicide. But as Paul Hunter explains, the investigation into Epstein's crimes doesn't appear to be slowing down.
It has at once baffled and enraged countless in this country. In this New York jail, the suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. Said the U.S. Attorney General today, it's appalling.
We are now learning of serious irregularities at this facility that are deeply concerning and demand a thorough investigation.
Epstein, as most by now know, was an enormously wealthy money manager and convicted sex offender with a high-powered social circle, including, in years past, Donald Trump. As Epstein's life ended early Saturday, he stood accused of fresh sex crimes involving underage girls and faced potentially decades in prison. And so the big question, how on earth was the apparent suicide even possible in such a high-security place? Days after an earlier apparent suicide attempt, a fellow inmate removed from the cell. Somehow, Friday night, guards here failed to look in on him. Conspiracy theories abound, fueled in part by that social circle, friendly not just with Trump, these images are from '92, but also Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. On Britain's front pages today, himself now accused of assault by one of the women also accusing Epstein, denied by Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, Epstein's death brings renewed focus on this woman, his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, accused recruiter of girls to be assaulted, whereabouts for the moment unknown. At the wedding of Bill Clinton's daughter, Chelsea, in 2010, that's her off to the side among the invited guests. As for what she did with Epstein,
and there are allegations that Miss Maxwell was an active participant in the sexual abuse.
Indeed, even though authorities note the criminal case against Epstein died with Epstein,
Any co-conspirators should not rest easy. The victims deserve justice, and they will get it.
today in France, where Epstein owned this property, fresh calls to open an investigation there. Questions now worldwide mount. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
As tensions between India and Pakistan intensify, people in the disputed Kashmir region have been cut off from all phone and internet access. Coming up, local Kashmiris fear for the safety of their families.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Autopsy results for Briar Schmigelski and Cam McLeod show they died by suicide using guns. The two teens were suspected in 3 northern BC deaths. They were found dead near Gillen, Manitoba last week. Mounties say they were dead for a number of days before their bodies were found. They say it's likely the pair was alive during the extensive search efforts in Gillen.
Nice mix of the beauty of nature, the mountains, the ocean, as well as a big city, which is a vibrant city.
BC tourism is expected to reach record levels again this year. Many of the tourists are coming from the U.S., the UK, China, and Mexico. But Destination BC is now trying to get more people to visit those places in our province that are a little less traveled. As tensions between India and Pakistan intensify, people in Kashmir have been cut off from all phone and internet access.
As our John Hernandez reports tonight, it's left many members of the local Kashmiri community here in Vancouver fearing for the safety of their families.
We don't know. It's been a tough time.
Manzoor Wani and his wife Fuzia Kasim are finding it hard to celebrate Eid ul-Adha. The Islamic festival of sacrifice is known for bringing family together. But this year, they're reminded of their relatives overseas. They both have parents and siblings in Kashmir.
It's been very hard to see it kind of go from a very peaceful area to what it is today.
Phone and internet service has been shut down in the region shared by India and Pakistan as both countries jockey for control over the long disputed territory. The region is under a security lockdown. Wani and Kasim haven't heard from their relatives in over a week.
Celebration to me means to connect with my parents, to connect with my brothers and sisters and talk to them on phone. When there is this blockade, how on earth am I supposed to know if they are doing well?
Tensions between India and Pakistan over Kashmir have been boiling for months, leading to an increased military presence on both sides.
There is widespread unrest. There have been protests. The people in Kashmir are, of course, extremely unhappy about this. The government has sent in an extra few tens of thousands of troops there to try and keep law and order.
On the Indian side of the border, the region's constitutional autonomy has been stripped.
India has taken a unilateral decision of changing the fate of Kashmiri people without consulting any one of them.
Ozeb Manzoor has been trying to call his parents in Kashmir for days.
What's happened right now is unprecedented. I've never seen this before in my lifetime.
The Canadian government hasn't taken a strong stance on the conflict. In a statement to CBC News, Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland says we are closely following developments in Jammu and Kashmir.
I think everybody is concerned that India, being a large economy and a potential big trade partner, is afraid to sort of make their views known on this fact.
Wani and Kasim hope that will soon change.
I think this is the time that we as Canadians step up to the stake and talk about who is oppressed here.
A rally will be held in support of the Kashmiri people outside Vancouver's Indian consulate on Thursday. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
At 6:32, you are looking at a live shot of BC Place. Some much-needed rain over the weekend, but will today's sunshine last? Well, Brett has the answer with the full forecast after the break.
Well, it's another deadly monsoon season in India.
At least 158 people have died and hundreds of thousands of others have been forced from their homes because of flooding and landslides in 3 states.
People have been trying to get to safety on the roofs of their homes with water inundating more than 1,000 villages there. Some highways and roads are damaged, others completely cut off by flooding. Hundreds of thousands of people have taken shelter in relief camps. In some flooded regions, the water is starting to recede, and residents are returning home to assess the damage.
Meanwhile, Typhoon Lakima has left quite the trail of destruction in eastern China. The fierce storm, which made landfall on Saturday morning, killed at least 45 people and forced more than 1 million people from their homes. Winds reached up to 187 kilometers an hour, putting it at a Cat 3, and a natural dam has collapsed as well from heavy rain. Firefighters have been having a difficult time rescuing people. Some of the less mobile residents had to be carried out on rescuers' backs, in their arms, and even by dinghies. Yikes.
Wow.
Scary stuff.
And
we had some rain here over the weekend. Certainly nothing like what they're experiencing.
No, definitely not. Unfortunately, the typhoon season hasn't quite calmed down either, because there is yet another one that's on track. This time, Japan is the one that has it in its sights, and I wanted to show you what it looks like right now. This would be Typhoon Krosa, as it's pronounced. This is just south of the country of Japan right now. It really isn't moving very quickly, and it may not look like it has a very distinguished eye. That would be the very center of the storm here, but that's because this is a tropical storm at this point in time, so it doesn't have the same strength that it would if it were a little bit stronger. That's where we get more of the defined characteristics. Zooming in on this, it's not moving very quickly, and I wanted to show you what it is right now. Presently, its sustained winds are at 95 kilometers an hour, so this would be in the category of putting it as a tropical storm. It is not at typhoon status presently, but it is going to be tracking off to the north and west over the next few days. I wanted to show you what this is going to be playing out like for southern Japan, because essentially it's on Thursday. This is the day that we're watching very closely. Could be in the very early pre-dawn hours of Thursday where this storm will be making landfall, and then it's going to quickly, very quickly track up to the north and east. So the one silver lining in all of this, Tokyo and the large population around it is going to be very much saved from this. The heavy rain we're expecting is actually going to be into the far southwestern portion of the country. On the note of rain, though, even though we may not be getting a lot over here into the lower mainland, there are still a few spots of the province that will be getting a few showers as the weeks progress. First and foremost, we're going to be looking at our central and northern coasts here. That's going to be the first area to be watching, and as well, some rain is expected for parts of Vancouver Island, but notice how there really isn't a lot going on here down into the lower mainland. That's for Tuesday, and then as we go forward throughout Tuesday and into Wednesday, we'd be looking at additional rain, more so for the East Kootenay region and getting over into the Rockies. There we could be getting some additional rain. And in terms of that, all of this is helpful for our fire danger rating. As you're going to notice here, we're not looking at any areas that are at our extreme level. Instead, at worst, we're seeing just a few pockets of very high, and again, this is all thanks to some of that rain that we did have and all of those cooler temperatures. What does your 5-day forecast have in store here in Vancouver? Well, honestly, 23 and 24 are the lucky numbers this week. There is not going to be a lot to talk about weather-wise here in the lower mainland. As I kind of hinted at a bit earlier, that sunshine is going to be coming out more so Wednesday and into Thursday, looking at some really nice days there. And even so far, the weekend, I think, is actually going to be pretty okay as it stands now. It's only Monday, but I think it'll be all right.
So does that make your job a little easier?
It does, and I mean, at the same time, it makes it a little bit harder to keep everyone entertained with weather-related information.
This is true.
I'm going to be doing my best to find something to talk about.
Stays like that, we're happily entertained.
Yes, exactly. See, I like it.
All right, Brett, thanks very much. Well, meet the actors with disabilities breaking ground in Hollywood. That's coming up.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Don't miss the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. The festival showcases dynamic and thought-provoking films and provides a vibrant space for queer arts, culture, and community. And join CBC Vancouver at the Love in the Earth Climate Action Fair on August 31st at Riley Park. Learn about the most impactful actions you can take to help our planet. For more on these events, check us out online.
Well, they won their dream home in a hospital fundraising lottery.
But as Jack Julian reports, a Nova Scotia family says they may have to sell their cottage over a dispute with the neighbors about Airbnb.
They call it a dream cottage for a reason. You couldn't ask for a sweeter view. And Troy Fahey still seems a little overawed, remembering when his fiancée's ticket hit big.
The two of us were like that high off the ground the whole drive up. It was so crazy, right?
They call it a cottage, but it's really a luxury seaside home with a view of Chester Basin, south of Halifax. It came fully furnished and ready to go.
Basically, they took every idea that we ever thought of, ever dreamt, and they put it in this place.
But Fahey and his family aren't ready to move in quite yet. He works as an industrial cleaner in Halifax. His fiancée is a roofer, and the kids are still in school. He wants to move here in 5 or 6 years' time.
We came up with the idea, put it on Airbnb. The money from that will help pay the taxes and, if there's any upkeep or anything like that, plus the other bills that come in with it, your power and whatnot.
Fahey says his guests love the place, but they don't feel all that welcome in the neighborhood.
The old stink eye, like they'll wave to certain neighbors and they'll just put their nose up in the air and walk away.
At $400 per night, it's not the vibe he was hoping for.
And I feel really bad because they're coming from all over the world. I mean, we got them from Texas, from Scotland. We just had some guests leave from the Middle East. So they're putting a lot of money in to come up here and relax and have a great time, and then be kind of shunned and treated like they're not wanted.
He says some residents have even complained to his guests directly.
Somebody showed up here and told them they had to be in bed by 11 o'clock, and none of the neighbors wanted to be here, want an Airbnb here.
Fahey's problems have moved beyond angry neighbors. In 2 weeks, the Neighborhood Association will hold a vote on banning short-term rentals. Fahey says that could spell the end of his dreams of a seaside retirement.
We would have to penny pinch it. We wouldn't have much of a life, right? It's just every ounce of money that we'd have to put it off to the side so that we can keep this place.
Fahey's neighbors wouldn't talk to CBC about their Airbnb concerns. The developer also declined to comment. Jack Julian, CBC News, Chester Basin.
Well, there's a historic homecoming this week in Nova Scotia's Preston Townships. The area is home to Canada's oldest and largest Black communities.
People there have fought stigma, racism, and negative press for decades. Tonight, we meet one woman who's lived through many of those challenges. The CBC's Killeen Jones with the story.
Under the big tent, the choir is making their entrance. And in this very large group is a very small lady whose very name conjures up what the Preston Townships are all about. Meet Eliza Brooks, 100 years old. She started in the choir back in 1938. She's being honored.
She said she feels like she could go back to work now.
That's Dr. Joyce Ross celebrating Eliza, but her starring role in this spiritual celebration is just getting going.
By Mrs. Eliza Brooks.
With the mass choir backing her up, it was time for her to sing a song she has sung thousands of times. This may be the last time. Her performance brought down the house. Joe Colley is the energetic choir director.
For as long as I live, I'll never forget that the opportunity was to be in the same presence of that lady. 100 years old, I'm honored.
I learned my own song how to sing.
And this song, well, it's one of her favorites.
This may be the last time, I don't know. It means a lot to me.
It's great. It's unbelievable.
It was a blessing to have her with us. Even a blessing to have this. This is a dream of mine that came true. And I thank God that we've followed it through, because we get so much negative news. about our Prestons. My decision was to turn it around. We can't change the negative, but we can show the positive.
And this is what positive is. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Cherrybrook.
Well, the entertainment industry has a long way to go when it comes to accommodating performers with disabilities.
But things are improving. Netflix has a hit on its hands with Special, a comedy featuring a gay man with cerebral palsy. And recently, Marvel announced its first deaf superhero.
CBC's Johanna Reed looks at the fight for representation, one gig at a time.
Yeah, they have a ramp there.
Actor George Alavisos is taking on a different kind of role. The 21-year-old is working with the Canadian Actors Union, ACTRA, to do audits at local casting facilities.
Yeah, it's pretty wide. It's easy to get in.
Examining physical barriers actors with disabilities encounter while trying to book a job.
The stall's quite small. For a lot of people, it might be quite hard.
Often, the solutions are simple, like adding a ramp as an alternate for stairs, or the height of a sign-in table.
But if I'm having trouble getting into the audition space, it kind of catches me off guard kind of thing. And so it may not cause me to do my best work, which means I won't book the job.
Alavisos has already booked the lead in commercials and appeared in Star Trek Discovery.
And I feel like the more representation we see, the more willing people are to go out and actually work on their craft and really, go out there and fight for roles.
It's representation in shows like Special that are motivating actors like George.
I have cerebral palsy.
What's that?
It's a disability in the brain manifested through muscular incoordination.
The debut season of the Netflix short comedy earned 4 Emmy nominations, including Best Actor for Ryan O'Connell, the creator and star of the show.
I always believed in the show, obviously, and I thought it could kind of have an impact and resonate beyond just like queer disabled communities, but having that validated is sort of incredible.
Special is based on O'Connell's real-life story of hiding his cerebral palsy while trying to make it as a writer.
I was hit by a car.
Everybody, come hug Ryan. He was hit by a car and now he's a weird, sad lip forever.
O'Connell started shopping his script 4 years ago, but says networks at the time were hesitant to pick up a series about a gay man with a disability, until Netflix said yes.
It was a hard sell, but I think that, that times have changed. People are realizing that stories like this need to be told.
But how those stories are told can also be an issue, something actor and advocate Tatiana Lee is working to change in Hollywood.
You hear these terms, they overcame their disability. And 95% of the time, they let people who don't have a disability portray them.
Still, Lee says the industry is waking up, with more and more actors with disabilities landing auditions and lead roles.
The conversation is happening. We are now included in that conversation. I think we just have to keep fighting, keep pushing, and keep educating.
In all our rooms, we built a ramp.
And it's a fight these actors and creators are willing to take on. Johanna Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
To another side of diverse entertainment now, Montreal's Pride festivities are highlighting a rather unique drag troupe.
As the CBC's Valeria Corimanocchio reports, it's one that celebrates how differences can be your biggest asset.
For these performers, drag is more than just transformation. It's a chance to show people what they can do.
It's actually amazing. It's very excitement. We could perform anywhere. We could perform any show, any style.
I'm unique. I'm clever.
I feel really confident and comfortable with who I am.
Aurora Shebag, Gaia Callis, and Justin Bond are part of Drag Syndrome, the first professional troupe in the world where all member artists have Down syndrome. They started exploring drag after working with Daniel Weiss's art organization.
It came from them. So when we went to this party and they saw the drag queens, they said, oh my God, we want to do that. And then they started to develop their own characters. And then we did a one-off show just to see what it is, how it is. It was full house.
The group's energetic performances and characters are a hit in the United Kingdom and Europe and on social media.
It's a platform for them to express themselves more than they can do in regular art forms or dance or theater. It gives them the space to be fierce, to be sexy, to be wild.
In the year and a half they've been performing, they've also had to brush off hateful comments.
Well, I'll just say back off, we deserve to be in drag and we deserve to perform because it's what we do.
And it's what they're doing in more places. Drag Syndrome's performances at Montreal Pride are their first in North America.
They are well known around the world. They assure that to show the representativity of our diversity.
Drag Syndrome are taking the stage one more time during Montreal Pride this Friday. Then they'll be the guests of honor in the parade Sunday, showing their colors as professional artists. Valeria Corey-Minocchio, CBC News, Montreal.
Riding the wave of diversity, how one sport is trying to branch out. That's next.
CBC Musical Nooners have returned.
It's fantastic.
It's our 10th anniversary of free live outdoor concerts every weekday.
People can just come and sit down and bring a lunch and have a good time and listen to some inspiring music.
For details and the full schedule, check out cbc.ca/musicalnooners. Summertime in Vancouver is hard to beat, and like these shows, will be over before you know it. Don't miss out.
And speaking of musical nooners, this is actually the last week that you can catch those performances. Yes,
Yeah, that's crazy.
Tomorrow, the wonderful Catherine Penfold is going to be performing.
Look forward to that right out here on the plaza. Very good. Nice. All right, with the Summer Olympics coming up and surfing set to make its debut, yes, surfing,
Yes.
there's an effort to get more Canadians interested in that sport.
Particularly with minorities who haven't been shown its appeal yet.
Brett Ruskin hit the beach to see what's being done to change that.
Well, this is a program aimed at increasing the diversity of the surfing population here on the East Coast. And it all kind of got started when the producers and creators and writers of Diggstown, the CBC show about a black lawyer from North Preston, the largest black community in Canada, just a short drive from here, who surfs on her downtime. And the writers were trying to tap into the local black surfing community here. But it turned out, as they began researching, that there isn't much of a black surfing community. And so here is the president of the Surf Association of Nova Scotia explaining what happened when they came to that realization.
The participation of people of African descent in surfing in Nova Scotia is basically non-existent. We've got like one or two. And then we were like, well, why? And it turned into this big discussion. And I went away from that just being like, you know, mind blown. This is a huge topic. This is a huge question.
And so this program invites residents of North Preston, first of all, to swimming lessons and then to some dry land training here on the beach and then heading out into the waves with instructors, with wetsuits, with surfboards, trying to get more people out on those boards. And so here is some of those North Preston residents who came out here today to try out surfing.
It's more of a culture thing. You know, when you see surfers, you don't really see people like ourselves. You know, you watch the surfing movies, it's something more over there than as opposed to, oh yeah, that looks familiar.
When you're the only black person in a group of white people, it's kind of like a little uncomfortable sometimes maybe, so it's cool that we're all together and we can all like learn together.
And so this program is running throughout the summertime, trying to encourage more black Nova Scotians to head out on the waves, head out on surfboards, and it's being done in part with funding from the provincial government, as well as local surf shops, as well as the Surf Association of Nova Scotia. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Lawrencetown Beach, Nova Scotia.
I think it's fair to say, though, that it is growing. Okay, we'll look at Tofino and some areas, you know.
The surf community out there. Well, you haven't been to Tofino yet.
So I haven't been to
surf.
Tofino yet. I do surf, but I've had the luxury of being able to do so in Central America where I didn't have to wear a wetsuit, but I definitely do want to hit up Tofino as soon as I can.
Take your wetsuit.
Yeah, it's going to be needed,
It will
I'm
be
pretty
cold,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it for us tonight. You can always find our news program online, cbc.ca/BC. Dan Bird is here at 11 o'clock after the National.
Have a good night.